Hello everyone, welcome to the next class. So in this class we're going to talk about another very commonly used command, which is chown, short for change owner or change the owner. This command is used in all Linux distributions and in Unix, right? Linux originated from the Unix operating system, and since then this command basically changes the properties of a file or directory related to ownership, right? Who is the owner of that file or directory in order to perform certain tasks, right? This is very important. And as root, you have the privilege to give and take away, right? This ownership of files and directories from any other users, all right? So, and the command is very simple. We're going to look at some examples here of how you can check who owns and change the owner of a file or directory. Okay, so here basically if we run this command ls/, okay, with the L option we'll check all the files and directories in the root, and with the L option it displays them like this, bringing more information about each of the directories and files. So in this case, what information are we going to work with? First, here, this information in the first column indicates who owns the file or directory. If it's blue, it's a directory you can tell by the letter D, right? And then here, the second column indicates the group that owns a directory or file. In this case, there's a group called root, and we can create other groups as well, which we'll see, okay? And even add users to these groups. And from the moment we grant a group the right to own a file or directory, the users within that group automatically receive the same privileges, right? So in our example here, let's go inside the home directory. In this case, it's root's home. But if it were, for example, any other user, from the moment that this other user logs into Linux, they automatically land in their home directory, their home page, where they can create files and directories. So here, let's go to root's homepage. Okay, so here, if you run pwd, just to remind you of the commands, you'll see that we're inside the home directory. You can also see that with this information, so let's create a new file called txt. As I mentioned, you don't actually need to use the .txt extension, okay? That's a Windows convention, but it's often useful for you to identify that the file is a text file. So using the touch command, we can create a file with no content. This will help us here in our exercises, okay? So just to check with the command ls-l, here's the file created in the home directory. Who is the owner? Is the one who created it, right? Root, who belongs to the root group, correct? If you were a user in your own home directory and created a file, you would be the owner. Here, since I am root myself creating the files, I am the owner, right? And by default, the root group is also the owner of this file, okay? Now, imagine a situation where you need to change who owns this file we just created. So you would use the chown command, and here you would put the name of the owner and the file or directory whose ownership you want to change, which is currently root and will become Sandogo. Okay? Obviously, it's going to give an error. Why? This user Sandogo here hasn't been created. He doesn't exist in Linux. And here, I'll take the opportunity to show you how we create filessery, how we create users. It's done using the user add command, right? Here I'm putting sudo in front, but it's not even necessary as I'm running as root. With this command, I create a user. I'm going to create a user here called Sandogo. There you go, the user has been created. And now we'll take the opportunity to set a password for Sandogo. And what password are we going to set here? It's going to be this one down below, okay? To make things easier, you can create your own password if you want, but I'm gonna use this password because if I set a simple password, you'll get a bad password message, okay? Right? So here, using the command sudo std, who are you going to create a password for? For the user Sandro, and here you type new password, okay? I'm going to copy the password here. Look, I can come here, press Ctrl C, right click the mouse and hit enter. Do it again, right click the mouse, hit enter. There you go, the password has been created, okay? You can also create your password by typing it in manually. Both passwords have to match, okay? The new password, then you have to retype the same password, and if the password is too simple, you'll get a bad password message. And now, how do we add the user Sandro to the root group? Remember, there is a group called root. Sandro isn't in any group yet for now. He's a regular user without major privileges. How do I add Sandro to the root group? I'm going to use this command. Usermod with the option A and the capital G, okay? A for add, as in add group. Where am I going to add Sandro? To the root group. So here, just run this command and that's it. If I want to check which group Sandro is in or which group Sandro is in, I use this command, group Sandro, and here you'll see that the Sandro group is inside the root group, right? So you can use this command to check any user to find out which group they belong to. And now, yes, we can change the owner of the file we tried to change at first to Sandro, except Sandro didn't exist before. Can we now change this file, which has root as the owner, to Sandro? So here, just showing you, here it is. So these are indeed exercises that I had already completed a considerable amount of time before, okay? So here is the actual text file, root, okay? So root is the owner of the txt file. I want to change that now. I want to say that the owner is no longer this root user. Now it's Sandro. So how do I do that? Just repeat the same chown command, which is the command we're looking at in this lesson. The file and the new owner, done. It's already been changed. If I type ls, notice that now the owner has changed. Sandro is now the owner of the file, right? If you want to switch back to root, just do the reverse process. You're going to say that the owner of the txt file is root. Done. So in this particular scenario, root is once again the designated owner of this specific file. Okay? If we now wish to completely change the ownership of this very file and subsequently set a brand new owner, for instance, as Sandro, and also assign the group as root, right? To achieve this, we simply need to execute this command right here. So with this particular command, you are explicitly specifying that the designated owner of this specific file is indeed a user and also a group, thereby clearly defining its access permissions and ownership structure. So you do this with a single command, just by putting a colon between the owner you want to specify and the group you want to specify, which will be the owner of this file. So if you execute this particular command here, you gain the ability to simultaneously modify both ownership attributes at once. This powerful function allows for the precise assignment of both a designated user and a specific predefined group as the rightful and complete owner of the file in question, ensuring proper access control and management within the system. All right. If you want to change only the group ownership and leave the owner, in this case Sandro, unchanged, I just need to run the command here. This same command, I don't need to put the owner's name before the column because I don't want to change the owner's name. I just want to change the group ownership of this file. Okay? So here, if I run this command, I'm saying that I only want to change the group ownership. So if it were another group that owned the file here, I would have changed it to root without changing the user owner, right? The owner of that file. And what if we want to work with directories? We've been working with files, and now I want to work with directories. It's the same thing, right? So here, just as an example, let's create a new directory called Dados Oracle using the mkdir command. So here, let's create a new directory, okay? Macdir, actually a directory called Dados Oracle with the mkdir command. Notice that by default the owner is root and the group that owns this directory is also root, okay? If we want to change the owner of this directory to Sandro, just enter the name of the directory. So here it is, look. I changed the owner of the directory to Sandro. So it's the same command I would use to change the ownership of a file. I just entered the name of the directory. If I want to change only the specific group, for example, okay, I can do that. Only the group that owns it, I would first need to create a group, right? And how do we create groups? You just use group add, right? It's very similar to creating a user, except here the command is group add. And here goes the name of the group. So let's create a group called Novo Gruppo with this command. So now a group called Novo Gruppo has been created. And now I'm going to change the ownership of this directory that used to belong to root. I'm going to change the ownership to the new group that was created. So notice here that the owner of this directory is the root group. Look, in the second column. Now I'm going to change it to the new group that was created. Done. So here, look, the new group has been created, right? If I want to change the ownership of both the user and the group, right, I'll put here first the specific name of the user who will ultimately own this particular directory. And then after the column, the designated name of the group that will also take ownership of this very same directory. There, it's done. Okay. Here it is. Look. This command is very simple and it's used a lot in day-to-day tasks. Okay. Maybe later on when we're installing Oracle, we'll need to change the ownership of some service or some directory from root to the Oracle user, right? Which will be created during the installation. But we'll look at that later, okay?